Hello, I am Stephanie Pedroza, and I am pitching this idea to you, the Congressman, to help implement change of the current law known as physician-assisted suicide, PAS for short. By doing this, many people in our country will have the opportunity to make their own medical decisions, including their end-of-life decision-making, which we should all practice our individual autonomy and support those who decide to take their control. As you know, the Supreme Court allowed for each state to pass their own law, including certain safeguards for safety. At this moment, the problem is that the physician-assisted suicide law is exercised and available only for a few states. The individuals who live in those states where PAS is legal and implemented are still facing barriers to access it. Some of those barriers include the vulnerable groups who do not have health insurance, those who are non-English speaking, and those who have no knowledge of PAS. Other barriers include those who cannot purchase the medications that doctors prescribe since most insurances won't cover it. The medication known as sicobarbitals are being prescribed are significantly more expensive in the last few years. In 2016, the cost was about $3,000. Those of the vulnerable groups cannot afford this medication or have the finance to do so. According to the article by the author Pertio, there is research evidence that identifies a need for change, just like the state of California, where there is diversity amongst most socioeconomical status, race and ethnicity, language, cultural backgrounds, and it has the greatest number of adults living with disabilities in the United States. By implementing state legislation, just like the state of California, which was allowed for budgeting Secnol, another medication that's prescribed, to be covered under the state's Medicaid program, also known as Medi-Cal, which not all states have passed this law, just like the state of Vermont. Another resource that can be implemented would be applying multidisciplinary teams, which can ensure that patients have the access to home health insurances, home safety evaluations, and skilled language translators. This will allow people to have access to health insurances and other services in hopes to access physician-assisted suicide if it's needed. California can be used as the example state in which we would know what other resources would be needed amongst the rest of the states. These resources would include implementing state legislation to budget coverage for the medications just like California did, as well as the multidisciplinary teams. We would monitor effectiveness of change with response rates of people who have used the resources and convey surveys after they have used these resources. Thank you for your time and consideration. This next slide here is a list of the references I used.